The coyote's howl cut through the desert air like a knife. Clara froze, one hand on her porch railing, the other clutching her evening tea. The sound wasn't the usual yipping chatter of coyotes hunting in packs. This was a single, mournful call, almost human in its loneliness. She set her mug down and squinted into the gathering dusk. There, silhouetted against the blood-orange sunset, stood a lone coyote on the ridge beyond her property. It was watching her. Even from this distance, Clara could feel its eyes locked on hers. The animal threw its head back and howled again. Something about that sound pulled at Clara's chest, like invisible fingers hooking behind her ribs. The coyote turned and trotted a few paces away, then stopped and looked back at her. Waiting. Clara shook her head. "I'm not following you," she muttered, picking up her tea again. But the coyote howled once more, and this time, Clara noticed something glinting at its feet. Something that caught the dying sunlight and threw it back in a golden flash. Before she knew what she was doing, Clara had stepped off her porch and was walking toward the fence line. The coyote watched her approach, then turned and loped toward the distant hills where the abandoned mines cut into the earth like ancient wounds. Clara hesitated at her property's edge. Behind her lay safety and routine. Ahead lay only questions and the fading shape of a wild animal that had no business calling to her like it knew her name. The coyote howled again, and Clara followed. Clara's house sat alone at the end of a dirt road, 5 miles from the nearest neighbor. It was a small, weathered structure with peeling white paint and blue shutters that had faded to the color of a bruise. The property was bordered by a rusted fence that did little more than mark where her land ended and the vast desert began. Inside, the house was neat but worn. Faded photographs lined the mantel, Clara and her husband Robert on their wedding day, their son Michael as a toddler, a teenager, a sullen young man at his high school graduation. Then the photos stopped. No college graduation. No wedding. No grandchildren. Clara was 53, though the desert had carved extra years into her face. Her once auburn hair had gone mostly gray, pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her hands were rough from work, her body lean and strong from necessity. She'd been alone since Robert died 7 years ago, a heart attack while fixing the roof. Michael had already been gone by then, having left for college and never really returned, their relationship strained by things said and unsaid. Each morning, Clara rose with the sun. She fed her chickens, tended her small garden that struggled against the desert's hostility, and worked part-time bookkeeping for businesses in town. Each evening, she sat on her porch and watched the sun sink behind the mountains, wondering how her life had become so small, so quiet. Sometimes she thought she could hear the echo of children's laughter in the empty rooms, ghosts of the grandchildren she'd never had. On those nights, she drank her tea a little stronger, sometimes with a splash of the whiskey Robert had left behind. The old mines in the hills had been abandoned for decades. As children, Clara and her friends had been forbidden to go near them. As teenagers, that's exactly where they went to smoke cigarettes and tell secrets. Clara hadn't been up there in 30 years. There was nothing there but dust and danger. Or so she'd thought. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a power bill and a catalog selling clothes Clara would never buy. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive feeling, with her name written in flowing script she recognized immediately. Lila. They'd been inseparable as girls, but life had pulled them in different directions. Lila had left for Los Angeles after high school, chasing dreams bigger than their small town could hold. They'd kept in touch sporadically over the years, Christmas cards, the occasional phone call, but it had been at least 5 years since Clara had heard from her. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. "Dearest Clara," the letter began. "I hope this finds you well. I've been thinking about our childhood adventures, especially those summer days exploring the old Willow Creek mine. Do you remember how we were convinced there was treasure hidden inside? Perhaps we weren't entirely wrong. I've recently learned some interesting history about those mines that I'd love to share with you. If you're willing, visit our old hideaway. You might find something worth discovering. With love always, Lila." No return address. No phone number. Just the cryptic invitation and a postscript. The past doesn't always stay buried, Clara. Sometimes it howls to be found. Clara read the letter 3 times, then set it aside. Ridiculous. She was too old for treasure hunts and mysteries. Besides, those mines were dangerous, collapsed tunnels, rusty equipment, who knew what else? She went about her evening routine, but Lila's words kept echoing in her mind. That night, she dreamed of the mines, of golden light spilling from dark entrances, of a child's laughter echoing down stone corridors. The next evening, the coyote appeared on the ridge. And now here she was, following it across the desert as the last light faded from the sky. The rational part of her brain screamed that this was madness, following a wild animal into the wilderness at dusk. Yet something deeper, something she couldn't name, pushed her forward. The coyote stayed just ahead, always visible, always looking back to ensure she followed. As they approached the foothills, Clara's flashlight beam caught something on the ground, a small scrap of paper. She picked it up. It was a photograph, worn and faded, two young girls standing at the entrance to a mine, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning with the fearless joy of youth. Clara and Lila, age 12. Clara's heart pounded. She looked up. The coyote stood 30 yards ahead, watching her. When their eyes met, it turned and trotted toward the dark shape of the mine entrance, visible now against the mountainside. Clara took a deep breath and followed. The entrance to the Willow Creek mine gaped like an open mouth in the hillside. Warning signs, faded and bullet-riddled, hung askew on the chain-link fence that had been cut open decades ago. The coyote slipped through the gap without hesitation. Clara paused, her flashlight beam dancing over the dark opening. Memories flooded back. The smell of cigarette smoke, the echo of teenage laughter, the thrill of forbidden exploration. She and Lila had never ventured more than 100 feet inside, too afraid of the darkness beyond their flashlight beams. What was waiting for her now, deeper in that darkness? This is insane, Clara muttered to herself, but she ducked through the fence anyway. The first section of the mine was familiar, a straight tunnel reinforced with rotting timber supports. Rusted rail tracks ran along the floor, disappearing into the darkness ahead. Clara's flashlight revealed old cigarette butts, beer cans, the detritus of generations of teenagers seeking thrills. The coyote waited at the point where the main tunnel branched. When Clara approached, it took the left fork, a path she and Lila had never explored. "Why am I following you?" Clara asked aloud. The coyote didn't answer, just continued down the tunnel, its eyes reflecting green in her flashlight beam. The passage narrowed, the ceiling lowered. Clara had to stoop slightly. The air grew cooler, damper. The sound of her footsteps echoed strangely, suggesting larger spaces ahead. The beam of her flashlight caught something on the wall, initials carved into the stone. CM plus LS Clara Martinez and Lila Sandoval. Best friends forever. Clara traced the letters with her fingertips, remembering the day they'd carved them, giggling and shushing each other. A noise ahead made her jump, a scraping sound, like metal on stone. "Hello," Clara called, her voice bouncing back at her from the darkness. "Lila? Is that you?" No answer came, but when she shone her light forward, the coyote was gone. In its place lay another object, a rusted old pickaxe, its wooden handle rotted away to almost nothing. Clara picked it up, turning it over in her hands. It was heavy, real. This wasn't a dream. The tunnel ended abruptly at a wooden door, so weathered it was barely distinguishable from the surrounding rock. It hung slightly ajar. Clara had never seen this door before, had never come this far into the mine. She pushed it open, wincing at the groan of ancient hinges. Beyond lay a chamber, perhaps 20 feet across. Clara's flashlight revealed mining equipment scattered about, shovels, picks, the remains of an old cart. But what caught her eye was a small table in the center of the room, with something glinting on its surface. Clara approached slowly. On the table sat an old oil lamp, a box of matches beside it. With trembling hands, she struck a match and lit the lamp. Golden light bloomed, pushing back the darkness. The walls of the chamber were covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, maps, a collage of history. Clara moved closer, holding the lamp up. Many of the photos showed miners, standing proudly with their equipment. Others showed the town in its early days, when the mine had brought prosperity. One photo made Clara gasp. It showed a woman standing at the mine entrance, a baby in her arms. The woman's face was half turned away, but something about her posture, the set of her shoulders, was hauntingly familiar. Scrawled beneath the photo in faded ink, Elizabeth and child, 1897. Elizabeth, Clara's grandmother's name. A soft sound came from the far corner of the chamber, not the coyote's howl, but something else. Something that made Clara's heart stutter in her chest. A baby's cry. Clara whirled toward the sound, lamp held high. In the furthest corner of the chamber, shadows gathered thick despite the lamplight. She moved forward slowly, her free hand pressed against her thundering heart. "Hello," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is someone there?" The cry came again, weaker this time. Clara rushed forward, lamp swinging wildly, sending shadows dancing across the walls. In the corner sat what looked like a pile of burlap sacks, stained and dirty. But as Clara drew closer, she saw they weren't ordinary sacks. They were old canvas bags marked gold dust and faded lettering. And nestled among them, wrapped in their rough embrace, was a baby. Clara nearly dropped the lamp. She set it carefully on the ground and knelt beside the child. It was tiny, a newborn, its skin still holding that reddish hue of the recently born. Its eyes were squeezed shut, face scrunched in discomfort. A wisp of dark hair clung to its damp forehead. "Oh my God," Clara breathed. She reached out with trembling hands and lifted the infant. It was wrapped in the gold dust bags like a makeshift blanket, the rough canvas softened by age. As she cradled the baby, it quieted, turning instinctively toward her warmth. Clara looked around wildly. "Hello? Who left this baby here? Hello?" Her voice echoed back at her, but no answer came. The baby squirmed in her arms, making small mewling sounds. Clara looked down at it. Clara realized. A baby girl. "Who would leave you here?" she whispered. "In this place." A glint caught her eye. Among the gold dust bags lay a small object, a locket on a delicate chain. Clara picked it up one-handed, the baby secure in her other arm. The locket was old, tarnished silver. When she clicked it open, she found a tiny photograph inside, the same one she'd seen on the wall. Elizabeth and her baby. Clara's mind raced. This made no sense. Why would someone leave a newborn in an abandoned mine? Why wrap her in 100-year-old gold dust bags? Why leave Elizabeth's locket? The baby began to cry in earnest now, a hungry, desperate sound that echoed off the stone walls. Clara tucked the locket into her pocket and held the child closer. "Shh, it's okay," she murmured, the words coming automatically. "I've got you. You're safe." A sound from the tunnel made her turn. The scrape of claws on stone. The coyote stood in the doorway, watching them with those intelligent eyes. It made a soft whining noise, then turned and disappeared back into the tunnel. Clara looked down at the baby, then at the lamp, then at the tunnel. She couldn't stay here. The baby needed food, warmth, medical attention. But who had left her? And why here, of all places? The questions would have to wait. Clara wrapped the baby more securely in the softest of the canvas bags, picked up her flashlight, and followed the coyote back toward the entrance. The journey back through the mine seemed both longer and shorter than the way in. The baby was quiet now, perhaps lulled by Clara's heartbeat and the rhythm of her steps. The coyote stayed just ahead, a ghostly guide in the beam of her flashlight. Clara's mind whirled with questions and half-formed plans. She needed to get the baby to a hospital. She needed to call the police. Someone had abandoned this child, left her to die, or to be found. The mine was remote, dangerous. No one came here anymore except thrill-seeking teenagers, and even they rarely ventured deep inside. Unless they were meant to find her. Unless Clara was meant to find her. The thought sent a chill down Clara's spine. Lila's letter. The coyote. The photographs. Elizabeth's locket. It couldn't be coincidence. They reached the main tunnel, then the entrance. The night air hit Clara like a shock after the close dampness of the mine. Stars blazed overhead in a cloudless sky. The coyote paused at the mouth of the mine, looking back at Clara and the baby. "Thank you," Clara said softly, feeling foolish for speaking to a wild animal, yet somehow knowing it was the right thing to do. The coyote watched her for a moment longer, then slipped away into the darkness. Clara looked down at the baby in her arms. In the moonlight, she could see the child's face clearly for the first time. Something about the curve of her cheek, the shape of her tiny nose, stirred a memory Clara couldn't quite grasp. "Let's get you somewhere safe," she murmured. The walk back to her house seemed endless. The baby grew restless, making small distressed noises that tore at Clara's heart. By the time her porch light came into view, Clara's arms ached, and her mind had settled into a single, focused purpose: protect this child. Inside, Clara laid the baby on her bed and quickly gathered supplies: a soft blanket, a small bowl of warm water, a clean dish towel. She unwrapped the child from the gold dust bags, gasping at how tiny and vulnerable she looked. The umbilical cord had been cut recently but professionally, not the work of someone panicked or desperate. Clara gently cleaned the baby with warm water, wrapped her in the blanket, and cradled her close. "You must be hungry," she said softly. "I don't have what you need here, little one. We need to get you to town." The baby opened her eyes then, dark, unfocused eyes that seemed to look straight through Clara. A wave of emotion crashed over Clara, so powerful it left her breathless. In that moment, she knew she couldn't simply hand this child over to authorities, to the system. This baby had been left for her to find. She was sure of it now. But why? And by whom? Clara reached for her phone, then hesitated. Who would she call? What would she say? "Hello," I followed a coyote to an abandoned mine and found a baby wrapped in 100-year-old gold dust bags. They'd think she was insane. The baby began to cry again, a sound that cut straight to Clara's core. She needed to make a decision. Now, dawn broke over the desert in a wash of pale gold and pink. Clara sat at her kitchen table, the baby asleep in her arms. She hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. Her mind kept circling back to the same impossible questions. On the table before her lay the items from the mine, the locket, the photograph she'd found on the trail, and one of the gold dust bags. She'd examined each carefully throughout the long night. The locket was definitely old, probably from the late 1800s when the mine was active. The photograph inside matched the one on the wall of the chamber, Elizabeth and her baby. Clara's grandmother had been born in 1897, the year marked on the photo, which meant the baby in the picture was Clara's father. But that made no sense. Why would someone leave a newborn with these specific items? Items connected to Clara's family history? The baby stirred, making small sucking motions with her mouth. Clara had managed to feed her a little sugar water from an eyedropper she used for her plants, but the child needed proper formula, diapers, medical attention. Clara had to make a choice. Take the baby to authorities and try to explain the inexplicable circumstances of finding her. Or, the alternative had been forming in Clara's mind all night, a dangerous, impossible idea. Keep the baby. Claim her somehow. Give her a home, a family. The thought was both terrifying and strangely right, like a key fitting into a lock Clara hadn't known existed. But it was crazy. Illegal. Clara was 53, alone, with no resources for raising a child. And someone had given birth to this baby, someone who might be looking for her, who might have had her stolen, who might have abandoned her out of desperation rather than choice. The baby's eyes opened, dark and solemn. Clara felt that same rush of connection, of knowing. This child belonged with her. She couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize it, but she felt it with bone-deep certainty. Clara reached for the gold dust bag, turning it over in her free hand. Something crinkled inside, a piece of paper she hadn't noticed before. She carefully extracted it, unfolding it with one hand while cradling the baby with the other. The handwriting was familiar, the same flowing script from Lila's letter. Clara, it read. Her name is Elizabeth, after your grandmother. She was born yesterday. Her mother can't keep her, for reasons I can't explain here. She asked me to find a safe place, someone trustworthy. I thought of you immediately. I know this is asking the impossible, but this child needs a mother who will love her fiercely and protect her at all costs. You are that woman. If you choose to accept this responsibility, there are papers in a waterproof container buried beneath the floorboards under the table in the mine chamber. They will help make her legally yours. If you can't do this, I understand. Take her to St. Mary's Hospital in Tucson and ask for Dr. Reyes. Tell her Lila sent you. She'll make sure Elizabeth finds a good home. Whatever you decide, burn this note. With love and trust, Lila. Clara read the note 3 times, her hand shaking. Elizabeth. The baby had a name, her grandmother's name. And Lila. Lila had orchestrated this whole thing. But why? Who was the mother? And why all the secrecy, the elaborate setup with the mine and the coyote? The baby, Elizabeth, began to fuss again, her cries growing more insistent. Clara looked down at her tiny face, then at the note, then out the window where the desert stretched endlessly under the brightening sky. She had a choice to make. The right thing, the legal thing, would be to take Elizabeth to Dr. Reyes. To let the proper authorities handle this. To walk away. But as the first rays of sunlight spilled across her kitchen floor, Clara knew she couldn't do it. Somehow, this child had been meant for her. A second chance. A miracle in the form of a tiny girl wrapped in gold dust bags. Elizabeth, Clara whispered, testing the name. The baby quieted, as if recognizing it. My Elizabeth. Clara stood, decision made. She would need formula, diapers, clothes. She would need to go back to the mine for those papers. She would need to create a story, a history, a future. But first, she burned Lila's note in the sink, watching the paper curl and blacken until nothing remained but ash. 3 days later, Clara stood at the entrance to the Willow Creek mine, Elizabeth secured against her chest in a makeshift sling. The papers she'd retrieved from beneath the floorboards were now safely hidden in her home. Adoption documents, a birth certificate with blank spaces for the parents' names, even instructions for creating a paper trail that would stand up to scrutiny. Clara still had questions, so many questions, but they would have to wait. For now, she had a daughter to care for, a life to rebuild. Movement caught her eye. The coyote sat on a ridge above the mine entrance, watching them. In the clear morning light, Clara could see it clearly, an old female, gray around the muzzle, with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold secrets. "Thank you," Clara said softly, "for leading me to her." The coyote rose, stretched, and gave one last look at Clara and Elizabeth before turning and trotting away across the desert, its form shimmering in the heat haze until it disappeared like a mirage. Clara looked down at Elizabeth, sleeping peacefully against her chest. "Let's go home," she whispered. As they walked away from the mine, Clara felt lighter than she had in years. The desert stretched around them, harsh and beautiful, full of dangers and wonders alike. Just like life. Just like love. Behind them, the mine entrance stood dark against the hillside, a reminder of where they had found each other. Ahead lay an uncertain future, a path Clara never expected to walk again, motherhood, with all its fears and joys. Elizabeth stirred against her chest, making small dreaming noises. Clara placed a gentle hand on her back, feeling the miracle of her breathing, the perfect trust of her surrender to sleep. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The woman who thought her chance at motherhood had passed, and the baby who appeared like gold dust in the darkness, each saving the other from a life of isolation. Clara looked back once more at the hills where the coyote had disappeared. "Thank you, Lila," she whispered to the wind. "Wherever you are." Then she turned toward home, toward the future, the desert stretching endlessly before them, full of possibility.